Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. If I had to give this lecture in Singapore, I would be telling you good evening. So that's the time difference between Morocco and Singapore. I'm thankful to the OCP as well as Symbiosis Organizing Committee, DIBA, for inviting me over for this opportunity to share our thoughts on innovation and sustainability. Most of you know innovation, sustainability are very large topics. And I'm a professor. What would happen? I will be giving the lecture till end of the evening. Right? Yes or no? You are very serious. Right. So you want that? No. So, right. So what I'm going to do is I will take about 35 minutes or so, take you through some important slides. You have a copy of my presentation. You are more than welcome to see it at your own leisure time. At this important occasion, I also would like to congratulate OCP for incubating this particular university to become world-class university. This is exactly what we did about 20 years ago in Singapore. My presentation will actually take you through how this happened and perhaps something that we could have a mutual learning. So I hope that's the objective of this presentation, focusing on mining industry, at the same time, the broader context of innovation and sustainability. I think the best way to start is with this slide. I like that Moroccan mint tea. And more interesting was this gentleman, the moment I said I'm from Singapore, he actually told me more about Singapore to me. So he's so familiar about Singapore. I have noticed a number of Moroccan people, I think through your media programs as well as your own family members, you had exposure to Singapore, which is very nice. I feel very happy and privileged, and you're all more than welcome to visit our country. Also, I'm not sure whether this student is in the audience. I think he looked up the program and then he saw my name. He shot the email. And then I read his email. It was clear to me that OCP is thinking quite forward, and you've already been looking at harnessing renewable energies, which is brilliant. So I'm going to look at a mining sector at the same time, innovation and sustainability. Oh, well, that's not Morocco, that's Chile. I was there about 2 weeks ago, visiting Chile copper mines. So I was invited to have a strategy discussion about innovation. And you might know this gentleman, he was actually in Marrakesh for COP22. And he was actually explaining, Alejandro, he's the head of the investment agency in Chile, and he was explaining how green mining is being pursued in Chile. Take a look at that one. Just like Morocco, the largest producer of phosphates, Chile is the largest producer of copper for the world. And if you notice, they said they are going into renewable energy. They have invested. Right now, they have a 500 megawatt solar power plant. The plan is to go up to 1.2 gigawatts in Atacama Desert. And of course, they're also looking into aspects like a digitization of mining, autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles and batteries, IoT, nanotechnology assisted mining, and water treatment. So some of these topics, actually, I would be covering part of my presentation. So that's how we link to what is the interest of Morocco as well as OCP. Why innovation is needed? Because solar PV technology has been there for quite some time, more than 30 to 40 years. Still, there is need for innovation. Here is an excellent example. Chile had set up 400 megawatts plant already, but they're having some other technical challenges. It's an Italian technology. And the reason is, if you notice, if you notice here, they have a UV radiation very high. And because of that, the modules have a shorter lifespan. So obviously, technology might be established. You still need innovation because the conditions at which this technology is deployed could be different. And I say that from observing the sun, of course, we all observe. Let's see. Do you recognize the face there? Looks like me? Yeah, that's right. I'm younger now, right? Okay. So this was about 10 years ago. We established a Solar Energy Research Institute, and I was the founding chairman. We spent about $120 million. And the reason was we have no solar industry in Singapore at that time. But we felt, as a strategic energy independence, Singapore needs to go into the solar energy. And I could go into the details if you are interested, but fundamentally, we established this one. When we established this institute, the issue is we had no human capital who are actively involved in a PV technology. So I actually hired Joachim Luther. He was the head of the Freiburg Solar Energy Institute in Germany. So when we hired him, he basically said, why would I need to come to Singapore? I told him, I give you $120 million, and we'll have an industry to work with. But we had no industry. At the time, we went to Norway, and we got Renewable Energy Corporation to invest or bring the technology to Singapore. Right now, happily, after 5 years, we have worth a $4 billion industry, which is actually built in Singapore, REC. And this institute, Solar Energy Institute, provides the innovation. So this conference is about innovation and sustainability. Solar energy is sustainable technology. Innovation is you structure research institutes at the universities, what we call corporate labs at the National University of Singapore, and we work on industry-defined problems. Just as this university being incubated by OCP is an excellent way to pursue that strategy. And of course, we are looking at low-carbon solutions and innovations via collaborative research. That's basically the strategies we have done. Happily, within 2 years, we have more than 120 high-quality research scientists in one place. Really, it has kickstarted the whole program. We have the whole industry now. We're one of the major players in this area. And you look at it, how is this addressing Singapore's own needs? Singapore, I will later on give you the details. We need about 6 gigawatts peak electricity capacity. And our plan is to build 4 gigawatts of, that is almost 80% of the national electricity need, by what we call floating solar farms. Singapore is a very small place, but we are an island. We have access to the sea. You can imagine more like a Casablanca. So the question is, can we have the solar farms built on the sea, but delivers electricity to the country? And that's basically the plan, and we're on our way, and that's about 4 gigawatts. And then you do a lot of technology and innovation in that area. So again, it's very much customized to the needs of the country. Okay? Well, I think I'm not going to tell about Morocco to the Moroccans, because you know that. But me coming from abroad, I still need to have a sense of it. Of course, you are the players for the phosphate industry for the world. And of course, it goes into many aspects of the daily life. It's common. So what I intend to do is I'll take some of those and try to show some of the innovative technologies that are coming up. So that's the way I bring the aspect of innovation into the kind of work you're trying to do here. And sustainability theme is picked up. We just celebrated about a few weeks ago the world's Sustainability Day. And these are the issues which you can actually find them in a literature, scientific literature, which talks about some of the issues with the phosphate mining, which you are all very familiar. You would also note is from this, what are the options you might have in terms of moving forward, where you could introduce sustainability concepts in the overall supply chain of mining industry. But I could probably add a few more things. That is how you can integrate renewable energy technologies that are coming up, automation, electric vehicles, batteries, nanotechnology, water treatment. Again, there's a whole range of other what we call adjacent innovations which could be integrated into your grand plan of making the mining sector sustainable. So that's some of the ideas which I thought I can share with you. So this I would not go into that because I said I want to go forward so that I complete within the time given to me. And this is your population. That's how they are becoming literate, which is very essential when OCP wants to incubate this university to be innovative, as well as set up a lot of startup companies, high technology startups. So I think that's the background I looked at. And that's what your plan is. Let's compare now Morocco and Singapore. You have 35 million population. We have 5 million plus population. Our GDP is about $300 billion, and you have about $100 billion GDP. If you look at per capita income, we would be about 87,000, and that would make us top 3 in the world. So that's basically the scenario of Singapore. And Singapore was a fishing village 50 years ago. So 50 years ago, it was just a fishing village. All right, so I'll take you through what actually has happened. Okay, that's basically, it's me, a robot, talking to you. And then that's Singapore and the National University of Singapore. I'll give the introduction, then I jump into some of the innovative ideas. This is the National University of Singapore's engineering school. We have about 10,000 students. I was running it as the Dean of Engineering. During my time, it became the top 10 schools in the world. If you want to know how many engineering schools there on the planet, there are more than 10,000 engineering schools on the planet, producing 2 million engineers a year. So that's the level of capacity that's being built around the world. So we were very happy that this became among the top 10 in the world. And this is the university, my university. It's number 1 Asia. Asia would have about 6,000 to 8,000 universities, and National University of Singapore is now number 1. And in the world, it would be top 12 in the world, according to the international rankings. Not by our rankings, by the international rankings by different agencies. And if you look at how this university became so prominent in a shorter period, is we took the path of internationalization. And I was asking how this institution, where we are right now located, how are you recruiting students, and how are you recruiting faculty members, how you are incentivizing research. Most of the things I heard are pretty much you are in the right direction. That's exactly what we did 20 years ago or 10 years ago. So I think what you told me is music to my ears. And of course, there is some other ranking called innovative universities. We would come as the top 11 in the world. And this is our patent profile, how actively we file patents from the university. You see in the last 10, 20 years, a high trajectory of patent filing. And of course, we also established a big funding to promote innovation, not only by ourselves. For example, in this university or in Morocco, there is a startup that wished to go to Singapore that would be facilitated, and vice versa. So I think this is again where this institution can explore how to establish transnational partnerships, especially in Asia, Far East, where we would be very open to have such an arrangement. This is a structured program. It's already happening. So this is how we think innovation can be promoted, because we ourselves may not have all the tools and abilities. By having a global partnerships, you promote innovation much faster. That's the concept behind it. And you can see Singapore is a top 12 spot in terms of tech startup ecosystems in the world. And then now coming to actual Singapore in terms of the size. Singapore is located here. That's a big country, Malaysia, Indonesia. We're a small, tiny dot, 700 square kilometers. Probably that's the size of Marrakesh, I have a feeling. Maybe Marrakesh is probably bigger, right? So we are exactly the size of a small, tiny island, about 5 million people. And we are one of the densest living places on the planet. Most people live in the sky because of the tall buildings. There's not much land mass that is there, and that's what it is. And so when we go back in 1965, about 50 years ago, there's no energy, no food, no water, no natural resources, no scenic nature either. You have a fantastic scenic nature in Morocco, Marrakesh. We had nothing actually, except just a fishing village. And fast forward, it has moved completely. It has transformed. We also joke actually. You see here the flying wheel. Yeah, sorry. We always say London has the eye, and this our wheel is about 1 inch bigger than that one. We say that. I think they figured out we need to have at least 1 inch bigger than London one. So that's how it goes, right? That's a new addition. If you had been to Morocco, say 10 years ago, you would not have found that. Now it is there. It's a beautiful place to visit. Okay, that's how it looks like. That's the skyline. And you see this is the tallest buildings. We have a ship on the top. More important is we are a trading nation. So our trade volumes would be about $1 trillion. And we have $100 million companies, about 2,000, and that's numbers. So, and one more detail probably I can give you, the total foreign exchange in the world in a day would be about $6 trillion. Singapore does about $0.6 trillion foreign exchange. So that's the amount of involvement on the global activities. Okay, that's pretty much. And how do we make that money? So we have, just as you, some of the heavy industry. And here, chemicals and oil refining, marine and offshore. Recently, we moved into LNG, which is a large sector. And then, of course, finance and aerospace. Okay. The purpose of this slide is we know Singapore is small and the world is big. There are lots of big countries. So we see ourselves a tugboat. The world is a massive shipping liner. You really can't influence it too much, but you could adjust it a little bit as a small nation. So that's pretty much the mindset of Singaporeans. So this is how it works. Okay, so how did we do that? If you notice, I began saying in 1965, we had nothing, but we have human beings. We have lots of humans, well, at least 2 million people. So we invested in human beings, and you should see, okay, let me get that one. So what we've done is we steadily invested in scientific research and innovation. That's the innovation in, okay, let me show you. In terms of the perspective, number of research scientists and engineers per million population, Singapore will have about 6,500, which makes it the highly dense research and innovation ecosystem in the world. So that's the way to invest it. And if you look at the numbers, if you notice here in 2000, there are only 5,000 research scientists and engineers. Fast forward 15 years, 16 years, we have 50,000 research scientists and engineers in one single location. And there are about 3,000 women PhDs. So that's another important human capital. So we now spend close to $19 billion on scientific research in a period of 5 years. And these are the sectors where we are investing. I'm one of the advisors for this investment strategies, why we choose certain areas. Here is an example. One example is to build Singapore as a smart nation. And these are the articles I wrote some time ago, also appeared in Scientific American. It's basically smart nation. Make use of the digital technologies and make the country as smart as possible. What it means, basically there's lots of areas, but for you, for example, in the transportation sector, for example, waste management sector, water treatment, delivering energy, all this requires these smart technologies. So we are investing lots of innovations that are being test-bedded and integrated. Okay. Just give an example because you have an interest in shipping. And if you notice, leading maritime capitals of the world, and in shipping, finance, law, maritime technology, logistics, and overall rank, Singapore would come number 1. Maritime, shipping, it's a number 1 country in the world. But we can't stop there. So we got to move on and build the futuristic port. Here, we're talking about applying digital smart technologies to make the port operations as autonomous, as intelligent, as smart as possible, so that you can increase the volumes, you can increase the efficiency. So you're basically integrating lots of innovations. So here is the smart port concept, and you could see how they are being deployed. Yeah. If you want to know, for example, we don't work in isolation. Take an example here. Recently, International Maritime Organization said the sulfur content in your fuel for the shipping lines cannot be more than 0.5%. So what we did is we came up with a technology guidance document, what we call TR reference. This is the international standard. So we actually involved in shaping the international standard so that we can play a very active role. So you could see here is an example. TR for LNG bunkering. Remember, we have no LNG. There's no gas there. That gas probably coming from some other countries far away. But you can still do a lot of things even though you do not have the resource. That's just an illustration. Okay. So the other one we are investing substantially is a smart manufacturing. And you could look up this article which we wrote. I'll be very clear. There's a lot of details. So basically smart manufacturing involves a variety of these technologies, and you are linking to the Internet of Things. And I've seen some of the presentations at this conference. You are going to talk about IoT in mining operations, which is very good. And we go from there. We're also looking at what we call a zero waste or a low carbon manufacturing, and that's how you look at it. And basically, this is how we define what we call zero waste manufacturing. So we are now developing systems where several industries, waste of one industry becomes a resource for another industry. But it requires a lot of information sharing about the waste because the waste characteristics are not uniform, and the volumes and quantities, availability is also not very well defined. So you need all that information to make this a very smooth, seamless operation, what we call industrial symbiosis. Again, it's a waste management. You link up the modern technologies. That's innovation. Okay, so I won't go into this one, which is what the field I champion, what we call materials informatics. I'll just tell you what we can do. This is a web-based materials informatics where you are looking at designing materials for the environment. So you don't just take the material, you design the material for the environment in mind, so that you actually make the products with the environment in mind. So this is the latest technology you can think of in materials research. And this is how we do the designing for the environment. And we are also now getting into vertical forming, because Singapore is a city, but we felt that there is an opportunity for vertical forming, a lot more automation. This is where your phosphates, which goes as a fertilizer, you have a much more controlled environment. Perhaps you can enhance the recycling ability. So this is someone can think about that. Yeah. So the urban forming. Okay, again, I just want to remind I'm still around, it's me, yeah? And I do talk about innovation, right? Just a proof for you, right? No, because the reason I'm showing you is we are thinking 50 years from now, how Singapore would be. Well, we had 50 years before, but we also have to think about 50 years ahead. So they think nobody knows the future anyway. But at the end of it, as a professor in the university, all I could do is I can say, okay, this is what I think. Let's see what happens in the future. If anybody has a doubt, you know what I said at the end of it, let's meet in 2065 and check it. You think I will be around? Probably not, right? Okay. You are hoping that I will still be around, right? Okay, I had to be 100 years by that time. Let's see. Okay. So this is happening in Singapore on the bigger backdrop in Asia. You look at what's going on. China, US, EU, India. This is the projection by IMF, where these countries are heading in 2050. So we are in a region highly dynamic. And I'll show you how dynamic it is. You look at R&D spending, the world's R&D spending. Now, China is actually going to overtake, in 2 years, United States. That's the level of investments going on in Far East. So those are the numbers for you. And you see that this is basically, if you rearrange that information, how it looks like. So which are the top performing countries in research? What I want to say is, the world is spending about $1 trillion on research and innovation. 1 trillion. So I think, again, a message here is Morocco is taking the steps, and I think you could do even more in this direction because innovation is moving very fast. Yeah? Okay, so why is necessary? Why Singapore also invests in research is the multinationals prefer to work with places, not only tax benefits, they also want to find places where they can harness innovation. So here, this is what is the trend, and importance of quality universities, which is exactly OCP has taken the strategy to establish this kind of world-class institution. Yeah. Huh? Well, okay, I have a Q&A, I'm going to answer that one. Yeah, sure. I will definitely answer that question, yeah. I'm not sure how much time I have. I would want to first finish my presentation, I'll come to you, yeah. Okay, so just, I know some of you are professors and students here. Just get the context right. Not a long time ago, at the beginning of Industrial Revolution, if you notice, very few journals move forward 300 years, or last 100 years, or last 50 years. Actually, you'll find the millions of researchers and patents, 11,000 journals, and 1.5 million papers a year gets published. That's research. And that's what is happening globally. Look at the scale. And some of us, I think you must have seen this movie, Star Trek. Yeah? You identify this guy. Of course, this is how you look like. So writing research papers sometimes can be very tough. By the time you write your paper and get it published, some of us most likely get to that situation. It's very tough. Well, I tell you the other numbers. They look at research, inventions, but actually converting them into viable businesses is also not easy, very tough. And especially the investment groups, they would ask you the hard questions, and that's where the difficulty comes in. They want to see the evidence before they invest. So this is where the chicken and egg situation. So you could see that. But it's not everything gloomy. In fact, there is hope for every one of us. This is the international compilation of average age of the most prolific inventors who file patents. And what is their age? Good news is, most of them are in 40s to 50s or 60s. So there is still hope for a lot of people here to be much more dynamic and file lots of patents, do innovation and invention. This is the global average. And if you don't believe me, I would have to show a real example, which has relevance to OCP, definitely. It's a lithium-ion battery. This guy, John, when he filed the first patent on co-invention of lithium-ion battery, he was 57. Actually, most people by 55 started thinking of retirement. He's 55. It's amazing. Just a month ago or 2 months ago, at 94, he filed another patent. And of course, he says it's a game changer for the battery technologies for the large vehicles. So I believe one side is tough, the other side is also quite promising. So it requires a bit of a different mindset. Okay, this is now, I'm just going to jump into this because this is my own research, but I wouldn't go into the research because a broad audience which have a diversity of interest. But I'll just show you, for example, lithium-ion batteries. You look at anode material, which is dominated by carbon, and then these are other materials, and then cathode materials. You have a lithium iron phosphate, which is relevant to some of you. And this is the performance, and you could see this is the lithium copper oxide, lithium iron phosphate. Well, with innovation, you can drive the performance higher. Right now, for example, you have a battery energy density, which is about 130. How can we enhance it? So this is where the new innovation, nanotechnology comes in. So here is more details. With my own technology, which we did, what you see, nanotechnology, what we call electro spinning nanofibers for cathodes. This is the Sony battery. The other battery is A123. If you make these in a very fine fibers, you change the way certain things are happening in the battery, electrochemical reactions. Fundamentally, you're not changing them, but you are changing the kinetics. And then that delivers you a better performance capacity and a cycle number, okay? So this is basically to show you the technology. The basic concept, I use what we call electro spinning, and that's how we produce fibers. We actually build the machines, so not only technology. So if you notice, we build the smallest machine, the size of the pen, so you can put in your pocket, take it. And we also build the large-scale industrial machines. These are meant for large corporations like OCP. So we span our research from the small end to the high end. So that's what we do. This is my own research. I know some of you have doubts, so just I prove myself again. It's me in a different dress. Yeah? That's it. Okay. Okay, this is just more details. I just want to give the backdrop on that one. So if you look at the lithium-ion battery technology, there's a demand for making a bigger systems. There's a lot of drive. For example, Tesla, which most of you know, it's the most valued company than GM and Chrysler. Right now, most valued company. But what is Tesla? It's a battery company. It's not a car company. It's a battery company. If they don't have a good battery, they don't have a future. So, what is battery? Lithium iron phosphate, right? Well, at least one of that. So there could be other things. Okay, so here is an evidence, China. I go there very often. In fact, after this visit, I'll be in China. This is how in Qingdao, they're producing electric vehicles. And the companies tell us there is still a lot more innovation is needed in the materials, system integration, and deployment. And of course, these companies are investing 5% of the annual revenue on R&D. So that could be one. Maybe small, but a good startup. Okay, so again, you look at the big picture. You look at here, China and India are mandating electric vehicles to be made a fraction of the total car production in that country. So they're actually mandating. So that's a huge policy push. So that means they're changing the transportation sector. You could see that happening already, right? And this is the volumes of the manufacturing by different companies. Okay, so what else is happening in that automobile transportation sector is it is getting to be more electrical, connected, shared services, and autonomous. Now, the reason it is autonomous, you may not realize it because you have a young population here, but you get to the countries like Japan, China, there's a lot more people who are above 65. And if you look at the car accidents, number of car accidents, that's related to the age. Most of the time, when you're young, there's more accidents, and you're also, when you're getting to the other end of the life spectrum, they tend to be higher accidents. Now, that's the motivation, driving automation. Assisted driving. So this is what is happening, why there is a push. Okay. So that, on top of that, you envelope it with a heating, cooling system, electricity. You want to drive the smog out of the cities, like Singapore, Hong Kong, Beijing. There's a lot of smog, and that need to be clear. That's why you go towards electrification. So now I just jump. This is other research we do, cabling. And you could see these are the cables, and you see how heavy, how big, how long these cables are. Can we actually innovate? And what we do, we work on a system. Let me show you. We work on what we call carbon nanofibers, carbon nanotubes, very fine, tiny, you actually can't see with the eye, but they're much more lightweight. Can we now use them to partially replace copper so that you save weight from 8 to 1? So the enormous saving in terms of the weight. Can you imagine offshore exploration? The cable sizes are maybe 3 kilometers or 5 kilometers long. It's very heavy. So you need that kind of innovations. So of course, that is a longer vision. You can take those ideas and we put them into what we call, I just go into the technology side, what we call wearables. So basically, we take the small bites in innovation. So here is the wearable technology. For example, my shirt or my coat, if I have this smart technology, when I shake hands with you, you more or less know me. And I also know you. Isn't it fantastic? Right? So that's where it is going. So we integrate our concepts into this, and again, there's a proof, yeah? Okay. Yeah, so, but the issue is, how do you make them washable, drapable, these fabrics, once you integrate all these wearable technologies? That's still an issue, which is what we are looking at. And here is an evidence, for example, a guy, he actually can open a door with a mobile phone. There's no special arrangement. So here is the proof that was just published. And the human body is used for electricity transmission to do these wearable technologies. Yeah. So this is the proof of concept. Okay, so you could also see we produce electricity from the human vibration. And you can also make different materials, different colors. So you could have fabrics, just not monotone. You can change the colors. So this is how the innovation comes in. So fundamentally, I believe innovation happens with the progress that's happening in other fields. In this case, you see, I came across, it's not our innovation. They call, normally we drink water. These guys are making you eat water. Well, most of the concepts are already there. It's just they integrated, it's just new innovation. So that's basically innovation. You can call it adjacent innovation, okay? So in summary, I would like to say, well, OCP perhaps can transform into a knowledge-based corporation because the innovation is happening much more faster, worldwide, ubiquitous. A lot of interesting things are happening. There could be integration from the adjacent innovations into your core business. So perhaps that's something you might be interested in. I just want to say, for you to promote innovation, sometimes a light touch is very helpful because the question is, how do you finance research? Sometimes research questions, the outcomes cannot be determined so easily. So obviously you need a lighter touch. Same with the startups. Most of the time, startups, they do not know the future, but they have a vision. It's different from large companies or normal businesses. So it requires a different way of handling them, providing them opportunity to succeed. So that's what we call a light touch approach. And just for the scientists out there, even a guy like Newton, he said, I could see far because I am standing on the shoulders of the giants. So it means it's okay to learn from others, other fields, adjacent inventors. And here is an example, Newton, how his interactions in his time. He was interacting with lots of people. I'm sure his innovations has absorbed a lot of things that are going on in other fields, but he able to innovate in his own domain, what he liked to, or what he's passionate about. So in conclusion, innovation is exciting. It's like climbing a mountain. It's tough, but I think it's worth it. With that, I just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.